If you've seen my review of the Sitka Nightingales that dropped the day before this video came out, then you'll know that I've currently got on my hands 4 different IEMs ranging from about $280 up to about $380. And so rather than doing one big review with lots of comparisons and contrasts, what I thought instead was I'd give you a quick snapshot of each IEM and then carry it through to a final kind of showdown, if you like, between my favourite IEMs out of this bunch and one of my other favourite IEMs in the Mangold Zen's Top. The Zen's Top costs a bit more money, but for me it makes for a really good benchmark to see just how good some of these are. If you haven't seen my review of the Sitka Nightingales, do check that one out after you finish this one. But for today, we're taking a look at the T-Audio Hype 2. The Hype 2s come in at $299, and they're offering some interesting designs, not exactly unique and brand new, but still interesting. And that is because they're using a pair of 10mm drivers, that's dynamic drivers, and those are being set up in an isobaric arrangement, meaning that they're both firing into exactly the same chamber, the theory being that you can get more controlled bass because there's more pressure being created from less excursion and movement of each driver. In addition to the isobaric subs, as they're calling them in each driver, you've then got a pair of balanced armatures, so these are essentially like a 3-way hybrid design. In addition to the internal technology, what you're also getting if you pick up the T-Audio Hype is a lovely set of IEMs, and I mean that in terms of their design and their look and their general feel. T-Audio are getting very good at making lovely looking and feeling IEMs. They're in acrylic housing, in that sort of pseudo-custom design, and what I mean by that is they're moulded in such a way that they kind of mimic the shape of most people's ears, but then of course you still get silicone tips with them. You get a nice range of silicone tips while we're talking about those, so accessories are good. The cable, as is generally the case with T-Audio, is lovely. It's this beautiful sort of twisted silver multi-stranded cable. I say silver, it's probably silver-plated copper. I didn't actually think to check that. But the point is it's a lovely looking, lovely feeling cable that's nice to work with and seems to sound good. One little drawback that I'd point out about the cable, or at least the cable in concert with the IEMs, is that the IEMs have a slightly recessed 2-pin socket, but the cable doesn't have a significant protrusion to help those pins make it all the way in. And it does mean that the connection for me feels just a little bit looser than I'd like it to. I've not had them fall out when I haven't been trying to remove them. I've never had it fall out of the actual connection, but it's something that I'm just a little bit wary of compared to some other IEMs. Beyond that though, these look great, they feel great, the accessories are good, so it's again going to come down to how good they sound. And the first thing I noticed as I started to listen to the Hype 2 was the lovely articulation they deliver on sounds like guitars. Unfortunately, part of the reason for that is that they have got a bit of excess treble emphasis. They do get a little bit treble happy for my tastes. And generally, if you have a look at the frequency response graph, they've just got this constant upward slope, a little bit like some of the recent Hyperman planar magnetic headphones. These have been tuned in a similar way where there is a good sense of bass, but the overall kind of tilt of the frequency response is all towards treble. What that can mean is that if you find yourself generally drawn to more treble-oriented IEMs, or if you've got a source chain or a setup that's a little bit thicker and warmer, these could work really well. But do be aware that they are definitely a treble-leaning IEM with good, solid, punchy, deep bass. I think for their price at $299, the level of quality, refinement, the general sound quality overall, I think is right where it should be for $300. But having said that, they're not the last word in refinement. And because they've got that treble tilt, combined with being a relatively cheap IEM in the big scheme of things, the end result can be a little tiny bit harsh sometimes. Not often, and not in a big way, but you do notice the difference when you start to listen to more expensive IEMs. As an example of that, one of the tracks I happened to listen to when I was testing these was On a Plane by Nirvana, and that track was really hard to listen to on the Hype 2. It just got too splashy, too aggressive in the top end. It wasn't particularly enjoyable. And so that's what I mean about these. They're going to really come down to your personal taste and how you perceive and hear treble out of an IEM, as well as your system and how revealing, how detailed, how bright that might be, and then of course the type of music you listen to. If you're listening to music that is generally smoother in the top end, say orchestral recordings, particularly older orchestral recordings, that's where these could be really good, because they're going to bring a bit of extra energy, a bit of extra bite where you might need it. But if you're like me and you listen to a really wide range of genres, you're going to find the treble from these, I think, goes a little bit too far sometimes. Two areas that I think the Hype 2 perform really well, and I've already alluded to one of these, is that isobaric sub, as they're calling it, does a fantastic job of the bass. So despite that tilt towards the treble, they've got a really solid, punchy and impactful bass. So they're kind of almost a little bit V-shaped, but overall I'd say that they're treble emphasized with solid bass. And what I mean by that is that the bass levels never quite match the treble levels. So even though there's clear and definite and obvious bass there, it's still overshadowed by the amount of treble. The other thing I think they're doing really well is that they've got a lovely sense of imaging. For a $300 US IEM, they're right up there with the other more expensive IEMs that I'm going to cover in the next two reviews. And specifically, they're quite similar in terms of imaging prowess to the Yanyin Canon 2, and that's a really positive thing. The Yanyin Canon 2, as you'll hear in that review, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell if you want to see that one. What you'll find when you hear that review is that they're one of the stronger imaging options within the four that I'm looking at the moment. And so the fact that the $300 unit can be comparing to a $380 unit, I think it is, maybe a bit less than that, the fact that it's getting that close is saying that these are technically doing a good job, but just refinement and that excess treble emphasis holds them back a little bit for me. And so as you'll hear me say in the next two reviews coming out tomorrow and the day after, I do think it's worth spending a little bit more than the Hype 2 and getting one of the other two IEMs I'm going to talk about tomorrow and the day after. But if you are capped at a $300 US budget and you like a little bit of treble energy, or you need a bit of it to offset the rest of your system or the genres you listen to, then I think the Hype 2 is nice. I wouldn't say it's great, I'm not going to recommend it, but I do think it's a decent, solid IEM. And so with that said, I'm going to end this video here. Make sure you've hit the subscribe button and rung the notification bell so you don't miss the next two reviews, because that's where things get really interesting, and that's where you're going to start to see how these all compare to one another and which of the four I think is really the standout winner. Of course, if you're watching this video sometime after they've been released, then do make sure you check out the other videos, the other reviews of the Yanyin Canon 2 and also the SIMGOT EA2000. For now though, I hope you found this video useful, helpful and interesting. Please hit the like button if you have, but for now let me leave it to the music, so happy listening and hopefully I'll see you here again tomorrow on Passion for Sound.